Revelation 1809. From the 14th of February 1941. Purpose of creation. Proof of love. Perverted will. Visualize the greatness of the work of creation as much as you are able and recognize the omnipotence of divine love, for everything you see was created for you, who are still in an imperfect state and therefore infinitely distant from God. But His love does not want to leave you in this distance and therefore let something come into being as a means to reduce the distance from Him. Creation is proof of His love and grace, for there is no other path for the resisting spiritual substance to lead it towards Him than precisely the path through creation, which demands a certain submission to divine will, and this already signifies an approach to God. However, the being's will is never forced to approach God. The being is only made aware of what it means to no longer be able to use its free will in order to spur it to regain the use of free will. The being must accomplish the latter itself. Thus the approach to God was never brought about against the being's will, once it had taken place, but the being decided to do so itself and now let its will become active. And in order to awaken the desire for freedom of will in the being, it had to take the long path through creation and learn to feel the bound state as torment, for only then could it consciously strive for freedom. Every work of creation is therefore to be regarded as a proof of God's love, for it serves to redeem the being from its state distant from God, which is neither happy nor satisfying for the being. What is of God has divine feeling and divine tasks. And the fulfillment of these tasks triggers the highest feeling of happiness. If, however, the being is so far removed from God through its own fault that it no longer recognizes its task, then the feeling of happiness must also diminish accordingly. The being has therefore become imperfect, and the state of imperfection brings it torment. God's love wants to guide every being back and give it its original abundance of strength again in order to make it capable of its actual task and at the same time to put the being back into the state of bliss. And this can only happen when the being itself relinquishes its will, which is wrong, and subordinates itself to divine will. But the being has lost its power of realization due to its distance from God. Therefore its wrong will has to be clearly brought to its awareness, and that is why God let creation come into being, which binds the being's will until the being feels the spell to be agonizing and wants to become free from it. Then its will begins to turn towards God again and the distance from Him becomes ever smaller. And even if the work of creation appears to be a gagging of the will, this is nevertheless the only possibility to let the being feel and recognize the wrongness of its former will, for only recognition determines the will to take a different direction. But the being's will can never be forced, otherwise perfection could not possibly be reached again. God's infinite love is always and forever at work to guide everything that has fallen away from Him to Himself again. And everything that is evident to the human being as a work of creation only proves God's great love for beings which, through their own fault, renounced God but can never ever lose their affiliation to Him. They should only become aware of their affiliation to God again. And this is the purpose of the work of creation, which therefore only manifests God's infinite love, kindness and mercy. Amen.